You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
When retired couple Jack and Diane Holloway vanish from their yacht just before selling it, what seems like a tragic accident turns into something far more sinister. The Vanishing Tide is a gripping cinematic mystery that pulls you deep into a world of deception, betrayal, and buried secrets. Detective Sam Calloway follows a trail that leads from a fake buyer to a long-lost business partner and a shocking twist involving someone closer than anyone expected, Diane's own sister. As the investigation unfolds, a story of blackmail, stolen millions, and survival against the odds comes to light. With no bodies found and one final clue pointing to a remote island, this is more than a mystery, it's a race against time. If you love true crime-style storytelling, suspense, and emotional twists, hit play and dive into The Vanishing Tide. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more chilling stories. 3 new stories every week. Sail beyond the shadows, where every storm unveils a new dawn. The sea had been their home for the past 2 years, a vast and unshackled world where every sunrise brought a new horizon. Jack and Diane Holloway had spent their retirement doing what most people only dreamed of, sailing along the California coastline, untethered from the burdens of land life. They had left behind the responsibilities of home ownership, bills, and routine, trading it all for the rhythmic lull of waves and the endless, salty breeze. Their yacht, Sea Haven, was a 42-foot beauty, sleek and sturdy, built for both adventure and comfort. Inside, it was warm and inviting, mahogany paneling, nautical-themed decor, and well-worn maps folded carefully on the navigation table. It was more than just a boat, it was their sanctuary. Jack, a former engineer with a love for fixing things, had maintained the vessel meticulously, ensuring every rope, bolt, and instrument was in top condition. Diane, an artist at heart, filled their cabin with sketches and watercolor paintings of the places they had visited, cliffside towns, hidden coves, and the vast open ocean. But now, their journey was coming to an end. The news had come through an excited phone call from their son, Mark. He and his wife, Olivia, were expecting their first child. Jack and Diane had always imagined themselves as present, involved grandparents, and the thought of missing out on this new chapter in their family's life made the decision simple. They would sell the yacht and move back to shore. Marina del Rey was bustling as they pulled into their slip for what they thought would be the last time. The sun hung low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, casting shimmering reflections on the water. As Jack secured the docking lines, Diane stood at the stern, watching the shoreline, already envisioning their new life. Weekend visits, stroller walks, baking cookies in an actual kitchen instead of their tiny galley. The sale had come together quickly. A buyer had surfaced almost immediately, Paul Lansing, a tech investor who had been searching for a live-aboard yacht. He had wired a deposit and arranged to meet them that evening to finalize the transaction. Everything seemed perfect. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, an unease settled over Diane. It was subtle at first, a small twinge of doubt she couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the idea of leaving the sea behind, or maybe it was something more. Jack, ever the pragmatist, waved away her concerns. "It's just nerves," he assured her. "Big change, but this is the right call." She nodded, trying to shake the feeling. They had made plans to meet Mark and Olivia the next morning to celebrate. "One last dinner on Sea Haven," she said with a smile, as she set the table in their cozy little dining nook. Jack pulled out a bottle of wine they had been saving for a special occasion, pouring them each a glass. "To new adventures?" He toasted, tapping his glass against hers. "To new adventures," she echoed. Outside, the harbour lights flickered on, their glow reflecting off the water. The marina had settled into a quiet hum, gulls circling overhead, the soft creak of dock lines, the gentle slap of waves against the hull. They had no way of knowing that by morning Sea Haven would be found drifting alone, and they would be gone without a trace. The first sign that something was wrong came from a harbour patrol officer. At sunrise, Marina del Rey was waking up. Early risers jogging along the waterfront, fishermen loading up for the day, the occasional hum of a motor kicking to life. But one boat stood out among the stillness. Sea Haven was floating aimlessly, untethered from its slip, drifting lazily into the channel. Harbour Patrol responded quickly, assuming the lines had simply come loose in the night. But when Officer Chris Delaney stepped aboard, something felt off. The yacht was eerily still, swaying gently in the morning tide. The deck was pristine, no signs of struggle or damage, yet an unsettling feeling crept up his spine. "Hello?" Delaney called out, knocking on the cabin's wooden frame. No answer. He tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. He took a cautious step inside. The cabin looked untouched. Diane's neatly arranged seashell collection sat on a shelf. A half-finished breakfast remained on the small dining table. Plates of toast and scrambled eggs, 2 cups of coffee, one still warm. The wine bottle from the night before stood empty, 2 glasses beside it. The couple had been here recently. A closer look revealed something chilling. Jack's reading glasses were on the counter, snapped in half, one lens missing. Delaney's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Within hours, the Coast Guard was involved. An official search was launched for Jack and Diane Holloway, 2 experienced sailors who had mysteriously vanished overnight. When Diane's sister, Ellen Foster, got the news, she refused to believe it. They wouldn't just leave their boat, she insisted. They were excited to come back to land, to meet their grandchild. Detectives swarmed Sea Haven, searching for any indication of what had happened. No distress calls had been made, no signs of a break-in, no known threats. The boat itself was immaculate, as if the couple had simply stepped off for a moment and never returned. Then, Detective Sam Calloway found something. Near the main cabin floorboards, something caught his eye, a glint of metal wedged deep in the wood. He crouched down and pried it free. It was a gold wedding band, crusted with dark, dried blood. Inside the band, an engraving read, "Jack and Diane, always yours." Calloway looked up at the abandoned yacht, now a ghost ship. Something terrible had happened here, and someone didn't want it to be found. Detective Sam Calloway had been in law enforcement long enough to know that disappearances at sea were rarely accidents. He had seen cases where couples had misjudged the currents, where rogue waves had swept people overboard, and where tragic mishaps had ended in silence. But this felt different. The wedding band with blood was the first red flag. The second was that Sea Haven was found adrift, but completely intact. No damage, no sign of struggle, no indication that Jack and Diane had tried to fight off an intruder or abandon ship in an emergency. Something wasn't right. Calloway started with the most obvious lead. The man who was supposed to buy the yacht, Paul Lansing. Paul Lansing was a well-known tech investor, someone who had made a fortune in startups and had the kind of money that could buy a yacht without a second thought. Calloway had expected the man to be concerned, maybe even alarmed, that the couple selling him the boat had vanished just before their deal closed. But when Calloway reached out to him, Lansing's response was shocking. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Lansing said over the phone, confusion in his voice. "I never made an offer on a boat." Calloway narrowed his eyes. "You didn't try to purchase a yacht named Sea Haven from Jack and Diane Holloway?" "No," Lansing said firmly. "Never heard of them." A long pause. Calloway's gut tightened. "Are you sure? They received multiple emails from you about the sale." "I don't know what to tell you," Lansing said. "I didn't send those emails." Calloway immediately had the emails analysed. Sure enough, they had been sent from an account using Lansing's name, but not his actual address. Someone had gone through the trouble of impersonating him, and now Jack and Diane were missing. Calloway met with Diane's sister Ellen to break the news. The buyer they thought they were meeting? He doesn't exist. Ellen's hands trembled as she clutched a picture of Diane and Jack, taken just before they set sail 2 years ago. "So, someone lured them there?" Calloway nodded. "It looks that way." Ellen's voice was barely a whisper. "But why?" That was the question Calloway needed to answer. He didn't know yet who had set up the meeting, but he was certain of one thing. Whoever it was had no intention of letting Jack and Diane leave that yacht alive. Sam Calloway had seen cases with false leads before, cases where the truth was buried under layers of deception. But this wasn't just a case of miscommunication or bad timing. Someone had impersonated Paul Lansing to lure Jack and Diane Holloway onto their own yacht for a meeting that never should have happened. And now they were gone. Calloway knew the key to solving this mystery lay in retracing the Holloways' final hours. Back at Marina del Rey, Calloway interviewed dock workers, other boat owners, anyone who might have seen or heard something the night the Holloways vanished. Most people recalled nothing unusual. Jack and Diane had docked in their usual slip, gone about their evening as they always did. Then one marina worker, Miguel Ortiz, came forward. "I wasn't paying much attention," Miguel admitted, rubbing his chin, "but I remember hearing voices coming from Sea Haven late that night. I was closing up the fuel dock, maybe around 11:30 p.m. "What kind of voices?" Calloway asked. Miguel hesitated. They weren't fighting exactly, but it sounded tense. Jack and Diane were talking to someone else. A man, deep voice, kind of rough. Calloway's pulse quickened. "Did you see him?" Miguel shook his head. "No, but I heard him say something like, 'You know what you have to do.'" A chill ran through Calloway. "You're sure?" Miguel nodded. "Yeah, I remember thinking it was weird, but I figured it was private business, so I didn't stick around." Someone had been on that yacht with them, and if Miguel was right, the last thing Jack and Diane heard was a demand, one that frightened them. Later that afternoon, as Calloway combed through the Coast Guard records, something caught his eye. A radio distress call had been logged from Sea Haven at 1:12 a.m. the night the Holloways disappeared, but it was weak, almost too faint to hear, and had gone unnoticed at the time. Calloway had the audio enhanced and played it back. The first thing he heard was Diane's voice, soft, terrified. "He's coming back." Then a sharp rustling noise, a muffled thud, and then silence. Calloway sat back in his chair, his skin crawling. Someone had been on that boat, someone had left and returned, but why? And more importantly, who were they? Detective Sam Calloway couldn't shake the sound of Diane Holloway's voice from the distress call. He's coming back. Who was coming back, and why? The only way to find out was to dig deeper into the Holloways' past. Jack and Diane had no known enemies. No debts, no criminal history, nothing that suggested they would be targeted. But Calloway had learned that no one is ever completely free of their past. So he started looking into Jack's financial records. At first, everything looked normal: retirement accounts, savings, the sale of their house before they moved on to Sea Haven. Then Calloway found something odd. A wire transfer, $250,000 deposited into Jack's account 6 months ago. The sender? Russell Crane. The name meant nothing to Calloway at first, but when he ran it through law enforcement databases, a file popped up. Russell Crane had been Jack Holloway's former business partner. 15 years ago, the two men had co-owned a construction and development company in Los Angeles. But after a nasty fallout, Jack had bought out Crane's share and the two had gone their separate ways. At least, that's what the records showed. But what Calloway found next changed everything. Crane had been accused of embezzlement. He had been suspected of skimming millions from their company before disappearing into obscurity. The case was eventually closed when Crane vanished without a trace. For over a decade, he had been presumed dead, yet 6 months ago, he had suddenly resurfaced and sent $250,000 to Jack Holloway. Calloway sat in his car outside the marina, staring at the transaction record on his phone. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. 6 months ago, Russell Crane reappeared. 6 months ago, he sent Jack Holloway a large sum of money. And now, Jack and Diane were missing, right before they were about to sell their yacht to a buyer who never actually existed. Calloway's gut told him that Jack had never intended to sell the boat to Paul Lansing. The whole yacht sale had been a setup, but was Jack setting someone up, or was someone setting up Jack? The only way to find out was to track down Russell Crane, if he was still alive. Detective Sam Calloway knew he was close to something big. Jack and Diane Holloway's disappearance wasn't a random act. It was tied to Russell Crane, a man who had supposedly vanished over a decade ago after an embezzlement scandal. Now, Crane had reappeared. just long enough to send Jack $250,000. But why? Calloway had a feeling the answer was still somewhere on Sea Haven. Calloway returned to the marina that evening, stepping aboard Sea Haven once more. This time, he went deeper, searching for anything hidden, a false panel, a concealed compartment, something that might explain why Jack and Diane had been targeted. Near the engine room, beneath the floorboards, he found something. A small, fireproof safe, bolted down and locked. It took a crowbar and a little muscle, but eventually Calloway pried it open. Inside were two things: a blood-stained shirt, too small to be Jack's, likely Diane's, a charred notebook, partially burned but still readable. Carefully, Calloway flipped through the notebook's blackened pages. What he read sent a chill down his spine. The entries, written in Jack's handwriting, detailed something he had discovered 6 months ago. Jack had learned that Russell Crane wasn't just alive. He had been living under a new identity. He had funneled stolen money through offshore bank accounts, hiding millions. Jack tracked him down, and Crane paid him off to keep quiet. But Jack wasn't planning on keeping quiet. His last entry, dated a week before he vanished, was unfinished. "I found proof. It's all in the ledger. Meeting him on the boat tomorrow to end this." That was it. No ledger, no more entries, just a blood-stained shirt and an unfinished warning. A deadly confrontation. Calloway now knew two things for sure. Jack had discovered that Russell Crane was still alive, laundering money, and living under a fake identity. Jack had set up a meeting on the boat, possibly with Crane himself, to confront him. That meant one thing: Russell Crane had to be found. But as Calloway checked the most recent records of Crane's fake identity, his stomach dropped. Russell Crane had disappeared. Again. And this time Calloway feared he wouldn't be coming back. Detective Sam Calloway had been chasing ghosts for days. Jack and Diane Holloway were missing. Their yacht had been found adrift, and the one man who might have answers, Russell Crane, had vanished once again. But now, with Jack's charred notebook in hand and a blood-stained shirt as evidence, Calloway knew one thing for certain. Jack had planned to confront Russell Crane on the boat. And whatever happened that night had ended in blood. Calloway needed more information on Crane's activities over the past few months. After digging through banking transactions, he found a connection. A wire transfer made to a known money launderer, Miguel Santos, in Ensenada, Mexico. Santos had a reputation for helping criminals disappear. If Crane had needed an exit plan, this was the man he would have gone to. Calloway made some calls. Within hours, he got a hit. A former convict who had once worked for Santos agreed to talk. The man, Carlos Mendez, wasn't eager to help, but when Calloway offered to pull some strings on an outstanding warrant, he started talking. "You're looking for Crane?" Mendez said with a smirk. "Too late. He's dead." Calloway felt his chest tighten. "How do you know that?" Mendez shrugged. "I was there when he panicked. He came to Santos, freaked out, said some old business partner was threatening to ruin him. He needed a way out." "And?" Calloway pressed. Mendez leaned in. "Santos helped him, sure. Got him a boat, fake passports, cash, but Crane didn't leave Mexico." Calloway's stomach sank. "Where is he?" Mendez smirked. "Last I saw, floating in the harbour. Someone got to him first." Calloway wasn't sure whether to feel relief or frustration. Russell Crane had been murdered. Someone had wanted him silenced, badly enough to make sure he never disappeared again. But who? If Jack had been the one to threaten Crane, then why was Jack also missing? And what about Diane? None of it made sense. Calloway turned his attention back to the mystery buyer of the yacht, the person who had lured the Holloways into their final meeting. If Crane was dead, that meant someone else was pulling the strings. Someone even more dangerous. Someone who was still out there. Detective Sam Calloway had been chasing one man, Russell Crane, believing he was the key to Jack and Diane Holloway's disappearance. But now, Crane was dead, his body dumped in a harbour in Mexico. That meant someone else had been orchestrating everything from the shadows, and Calloway was running out of time to find out who. Calloway re-examined the biggest unanswered question: who had posed as Paul Lansing to lure Jack and Diane into the meeting? He had assumed it was Crane, but that no longer made sense. So he dug into the email, IP addresses and phone records tied to the fake Paul Lansing account. And what he found changed everything. The emails hadn't been sent from Mexico, where Crane had been hiding. They had come from Los Angeles. Even more disturbing, the account had been accessed from a private residence. Calloway ran a trace. The address belonged to Ellen Foster, Diane's own sister. Calloway drove straight to Ellen's house. She opened the door, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Detective," she whispered. He stepped inside, his jaw tight. "Tell me what happened to them." Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what you mean." Calloway held up his phone. "You were the one who sent the fake emails. You lured them onto that yacht. Tell me why." Ellen sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Start talking," Calloway said, and she did. Ellen had always resented Diane. Diane had lived a carefree life, sailing, painting, escaping responsibility. Meanwhile, Ellen had been stuck in the real world, working, struggling, dealing with their aging parents. Then she found out that Jack had come into money. When she learned that Jack had blackmailed Russell Crane over his stolen millions, she saw an opportunity. She had partnered with Crane, agreeing to help him fake a sale of Sea Haven so he could get rid of Jack before he could turn him in. But things spiraled out of control. She had expected Jack to hand over the proof of Crane's crimes and disappear quietly, but he refused. When the confrontation turned violent, Diane got in the way. Jack fought back. Crane panicked. Someone was knocked unconscious. Blood was spilled. Realizing there was no turning back, Crane forced Jack and Diane onto a small dinghy, taking them out into deeper waters. Ellen hadn't been there for what happened next. But when Crane showed up days later, frantic, he told her they were gone, drowned. She had assumed Crane would clean up the mess. Instead, he became another loose end and was murdered before he could escape Mexico. Calloway listened to Ellen's confession, his fists clenched. "And you just let them die?" Tears streamed down her face. I never thought it would go that far. I just wanted them to understand how it felt to lose everything." She looked up at him, desperate. "But you don't know for sure, do you? That they're dead?" Calloway stared at her, his mind racing. She was right. Jack and Diane's bodies had never been found. And if they were still out there was still hope. Detective Sam Calloway had cracked the case. Ellen Foster, Diane's own sister, had conspired with Russell Crane to lure the Holloways onto Sea Haven that night. She had expected a simple exchange, a way to force Jack into silence about Crane's stolen money. Instead, everything had gone terribly wrong. Jack and Diane had been taken out to sea, and Crane had later claimed they'd drowned. But there was one thing that kept gnawing at Calloway. No bodies had ever been found. And in his experience, when bodies go missing, sometimes they're still alive. After Ellen's confession, Calloway didn't rest. If there was even the slightest chance that Jack and Diane were still out there, he had to follow it. The key was Crane's final movements. While retracing Crane's bank withdrawals, Calloway discovered a payment made just 2 days after the Holloways disappeared. A $50,000 cash transfer wired to a fishing vessel captain in Baja California. Calloway immediately tracked him down. The man, Marco Reyes, was hesitant at first, but when Calloway showed him Ellen's confession and told him Crane was dead, he started talking. "I never killed nobody," Reyes insisted. "I just did what I was paid for." Calloway narrowed his eyes. "And what was that?" Reyes hesitated. Then he spoke the words Calloway had been waiting for, to drop them off. Calloway gripped the edge of the table. "Drop them off where?" Reyes sighed. "There's a chain of small islands off the coast, real remote. Crane told me to take them out there, leave them with a little food and water, and go." Calloway's heart pounded. "So you left them alive?" Reyes nodded. "Yeah, I didn't ask questions. I just did the job." Calloway wasted no time. Within hours, he had a search team assembled. Helicopters and patrol boats were deployed. They scanned the islands, searching for any sign of human life. Then, a plume of smoke, a makeshift signal fire on one of the uninhabited islands. As the helicopter descended, Calloway saw them, Jack and Diane Holloway, skin burned from the sun, weakened but alive, waving desperately from the shore. Rescuers landed and rushed toward them. Diane collapsed into their arms, crying. Jack, weak but conscious, simply muttered, "Took you long enough." Ellen Foster was arrested for her role in the conspiracy, charged with fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and attempted murder. Marco Reyes, who had transported the Holloways, cut a deal in exchange for testifying about Crane's involvement. With Crane dead, many of his stolen millions remained unclaimed, but the money was traced, seized, and used to settle long-standing lawsuits from his embezzlement days. As for Jack and Diane, they recovered slowly, but their perspective on life had changed. They no longer sought adventure. Instead, they cherished every quiet moment. A few months later, they held their newborn granddaughter in their arms for the first time. Jack smiled, his grip tight around the baby's tiny fingers. "Guess we got a second chance." Diane kissed the top of the baby's head and whispered, "We're right where we belong." Outside, the tide rolled in gently. The waves no longer a threat, just a quiet reminder of the past. And for the first time in a long time, the Holloways were finally safe. In the end, the turbulent tides of deceit gave way to the quiet strength of redemption and hope. Jack and Diane emerged not as victims of their past, but as survivors forging a new chapter defined by love and resilience. Their journey reminds us that even the darkest storms can lead to a horizon filled with second chances. Sail beyond the shadows, where every storm unveils a new dawn.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained, and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.